Welcome to Sherlock Mondays. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we're going on a biblioventure through the stories of Sherlock Holmes. This is episode 25, The Adventure of the Resident Patient, and joining me as co-host is Monica Schmidt. Hey, Monica.
Hey, how you doing, Ed?
Good. I will be your resident patient for this show.
Lay
And
back on the couch and
there
we'll
you
talk
go.
about your mother.
We'll see what we come up with. 6 shows left. You know
I
that, right?
know, this is mind-blowing.
Blowing by, going fast. Well,
I know. Phew.
we have 6 more shows of Sherlock Mondays to deduce, decipher, dissect Arthur Conan Doyle's stories about the world's first consulting detective, Sherlock Holmes, and his able assistant, Dr. John Watson, in a kind of conversational annotation. If you are watching live right now, I'd like you to please like and subscribe. Subscribe to this channel, like these videos, and have fun in the live chat. If you are watching the recording, also, please like these videos and subscribe to the Rosenbach's channel. Doing those things gives us greater visibility on YouTube and hence helps us grow the audience. If you are listening to the podcast, thank you for listening. This show is also an audio podcast. And I would also ask everybody to please consider making a donation to the Rosenbach. If you have already donated or joined as a member in the last few weeks, thank you so much. That is really how we get to do this show for free because of your support for the Rosenbach. But if you have not already donated or become a member, I invite you to do so. And Sherlock Mondays, Hound of the Baskervilles, the pay-only show that's going to follow this, is open for registration, Monica. We're doing well. We have over 50 people
Oh
registered for
my God.
it, so we're looking really good, and
That's amazing.
I can't wait to do that show. More on that as we get closer
Yeah.
to it. I'm also giving a behind the bookcase tour at the Rosenbach. Now, if you're watching the show live,
Mm-hmm.
this occurs on April 4th, 2024. And what this behind the bookcase is called Elementary Detecting Sherlock Holmes and Other Consulting
Hmm.
Detectives. And a small group, we can only do 12 people for this. You come up to the library in the Rosenbach. This is all in person. And I bring out the materials that we have, the Sherlock books, some other things too relating to detective fiction. Probably some Dickens and Poe are going to be in there, and the manuscript for The Empty House that you will get to hold in your hands as we talk about these things. That's going to be on April 4th, coming up soon in just a few weeks, and it's your chance to meet me and talk about Sherlock in person. So you can register for that now. Registration is open for members right now, and the general public a little later in the week on Thursday, March 21st. Non-members can register for that. So one of the benefits of membership, early access.
Nice.
And you have seen these materials.
Oh, yes, I have. Actually, I think the last time that I saw these materials, I was wearing this blazer. So there's pictures of me in this blazer looking at the materials, and it is glorious and beautiful and wonderful. I think that was actually the last time I wore this one. So, but yeah, that's I mean, it's really cool to be able to actually like examine the manuscript and see it in person and read Doyle's handwriting. I mean, and just like see just how perfect his script is.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
Well, that will be soon. I love doing those things too, in person and meeting people, especially if you watch the show and you come. That would be really cool. But before we start our discussion tonight, we have to talk about what we are drinking.
Oh yes.
Every episode features a Sher-locktail designed by our good friend and co-host Mary Alcaro. You can find the recipes in the YouTube description for the episode, and I send out the recipe via email every week to those who are registered for the show. You can register
Mhm.
at the Sherlock Mondays homepage on rosenbach.org. And this is the resident patient.
Yes. I'm a little into mine.
Vodka, mine's much darker. I must have more Kahlua in mine.
Yeah, I let Bill make whatever Kahlua.
Vodka, Kahlua, and then it's some kind of, anise, liqueur, Sambuca, Ouzo. You have Pernod. I have
Yeah.
Ouzo, um, and uh, and a couple cherries in there for a garnish. But I'm going to tell you, I've had it's good,
Hmm.
but I prefer with Kahlua, I prefer the cream or milk with
Ah,
like I prefer the white Russian to the black Russian. So everybody drink what you want. So I'm gonna add some of that to mine here and be I'm gonna drink it without my straw, so then I could be like Lebowski and I'll get my muscle.
Deuterino, man. Years ago, the real dude, Jeff Dowd, actually was a guest at a film festival that I attended, Ebert Fest.
Oh yeah?
He thought it was hilarious that like we were meeting on 420, and he thought it was hilarious that I'm a drug and alcohol counselor.
Well, this is delicious either way. And it's like, with that little bit of, anise flavor in it, that's
Mhm.
really tasty. It kind of adds something extra to this drink.
That
The
it does.
thought behind this from Mary was that the variation on the Black Russian adds a hint of anise. Anise seeds have a high potassium content, which works as a how do you say it? Vasodilator?
Not sure, to be perfectly honest. That,
Vasodilator.
yeah, opens up the vascular system.
I'm gonna have to say it again later, and I had it worked out, and now I can't remember. To ease the pressure on the blood vessels and allow for easy blood flow through the arteries. That's what that is.
Hence the red flush. Yeah, there you
Just like amyl nitrite does. So,
exactly.
although,
Although poppers are probably a little more fun.
well, but we're not having poppers on the show.
No, no, no. We will not have poppers, period. But
And anise is safely ingested, unlike
poppers,
unlike huffing chemicals.
exactly.
Not safe.
Very not safe.
No, something I wouldn't do. I don't think I've never done
I,
that.
I mean, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I have not done that. I won't do that, but I know the results of people doing that, which is exactly why I will not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Not,
righty. We're good with all that
yes, yes, we are.
and that stuff. Um, do you have anything to plug, or do we want to get in the story? We can plug something if you have
Oh
something.
my gosh. Well, look, this weekend I'm going to be in Dayton, Ohio for the Holmes Doyle and Friends conference.
Holmes, Doyle, and
Um,
Friends, and
Holmes Doyle and Friends, which is a lot of fun. And I think since the last time that we spoke, I'm my soul is a little crushed, Ed. I'm not going to be able to hang out with you in Philly in May for the Sons of the Copper Beaches because
yeah, I'm sorry about
I'm
that.
going to be yeah, I'm really sad about that. But I've the Afghanistan Perceivers of Oklahoma, located in Tulsa, are having their 50th anniversary symposium and dinner, and I've been invited to be their keynote. So I'm throwing you over for the South this year. So I shall miss a good time in the city of brotherly love, but I'm gonna go hang out in Tulsa.
Cool. That's
It'll be
awesome.
a lot of
I
fun.
will
I'm
miss you in
excited.
Philly, but
Mhm.
I put the link for the Holmes, Doyle, and Friends in Dayton in the live chat as well. Someone has also given me the spelling of vasodilator. I know how to spell it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Wasn't the spelling I was wondering about. I don't know how to say the word. So
Yeah, I'm not even gonna try.
somebody wants to try to give me a
Oh, actually, sorry, Bill just said it. Bill, say it again. Vasodilator.
vasodilator. Vasodilator. All right, I'll have to do it again later. Good. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Mysterious Bill back there.
I'm sure he will make a guest appearance when this is done.
Bring out
Yes,
another drink. All righty.
exactly.
Well, let's get on with our story tonight. I'm sure I have lots here. And my notes are long, aren't they? How long are my notes?
Quite long.
Well, not as long as last week. I was like, oh my God, last week I couldn't believe my notes were 20 pages long. Uh,
Bloody heck.
but this week they're 16. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah,
Uh,
there is a lot in here.
On with our story. We have shared a PDF of a facsimile of The Adventure of the Resident Patient as it was originally published in the August 1893 issue of the Strand magazine. You can download that on the Rosenbach's Sherlock Mondays page. And the first thing we have to talk about, we talked about this before when we did the cardboard box, because there's a weird issue with the publication of this story.
Yeah.
So some people might not have, you could conceivably have a text that does not match the text we're talking about tonight. And it's only the opening. It's only like the opening interaction between the two of them that it occurs. What happened was Cardboard Box was published in the Strand magazine. And then when it came to do the book version in Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, Doyle decided maybe it was a little too sensational. I think that was the word that he may have used in the only reason we have that he might have pulled it. So he pulled the story from Memoirs, but he really liked the opening. And the opening was that mind reading sequence when Holmes says, Watson, I forget how he answers him, but it's like suddenly he can read his mind, and he says, how did you do that? And he says, oh, because I could observe you, and you looked at this thing, and then you looked at the portrait of General Gordon on the wall, and you looked at your picture of Henry Ward Beecher, and I could follow the train of thought the whole time.
Yeah.
He liked that so much, he was like, I can't get rid of that. And so he takes Resident Patient, which the text that we have in the Strand, and then he cuts it up and he puts that scene in there and makes some changes. Now I'm gonna share a Word doc that the text is probably too small for most of you to read, depending on the device that you're on. But I've color coded it to give you all an idea of how he has changed this up. And it is and it goes like this. On the screen to the left here, if you're watching the audio podcast, you have to go to YouTube to see this on the show, right in the beginning of the show. You see this black text here. This is the opening of Cardboard Box. And then the other two in purple here are the opening of, all the way over on the right is the Strand magazine that we're doing tonight. That's the same in the Memoirs. He kept that the same.
Yeah.
But here's where he makes the changes. And it was, and this is in red and black here are the changes he's made between the text from the Cardboard Box on the left and the Memoirs of Resident in the middle. And then over here in green, this is the story that we're reading in the Strand magazine Resident as it was originally published. So the problems that happened was in Cardboard Box, it was a blazing hot day in August. Baker Street was like an oven, right?
Yeah.
Well, he changed that to, it had been a close rainy day in October.
Yes.
For Resident. This is in the Memoirs. But then when we go down here, he's kept all this the same, in which the thermometer at 90, he's kept all that. Like, it's October. What are you doing?
Well, I mean, maybe he was like, projecting out like global warming. I mean, I've had 90-degree days in October, but this is Iowa, not London.
What's odd is that he's changed morning paper to just the paper because it happens at night, because they go out for their walk and they're not back till 10 o'clock at night. So he knows he's changing that to paper instead of morning paper. I don't know why he didn't change the temperature. Like, it's just weird. So
that is weird.
And then it ends with in the Cardboard Box, I see I have in my hands here a little problem, and then onto the new case. Here for Resident Patient, all the way over on the right, it ends with, he's doing chemical experiments, a day's work ruined. And then what do you say to a ramble through London? That continues in the Memoirs as well. And then the story is exactly the same after that. But it's interesting that he took the time to really make these changes because he loved that mind reading, Dr. Bell trick that Holmes does with Watson, which is all right out of Poe as well. Because this is the opening of Murders in the Rue Morgue as well. Dupin and his friend are walking along, and he makes a comment that says that he's like, how did you know I was thinking that? And he goes through the whole reasoning that he was able to figure out his thoughts just by looking at how he expressed himself. All righty. So you may have an edition that actually does not have some of the things that we're going to talk about, because what has since happened is that some editions wind up using this British text from the first memoir's British text. And then if your edition used that first British memoir's text, then it will be a little bit different in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, I didn't think these issues were going to come up in the beginning of the show, well, when we started, but actually there's
They're all over
not
the
many
place.
of them, but
I mean, there's not that many, but they are like, I mean, they must be addressed.
this is the biggest.
Yes.
So the way the adventure starts in the Strand, which we have shared the facsimile of on our website anyway, is again Watson telling us how and why he chooses the stories for these memoirs,
Yes.
right? And in this case, it's in glancing over the somewhat incoherent series of memoirs, which I have endeavored to illustrate, struck by the difficulty in picking out examples. Sometimes Holmes has performed a tour de force of analytical reasoning. And basically what he winds up saying is, sometimes Holmes is brilliant, but the story's not so great, so he doesn't chronicle those. Sometimes the stories are great, but Holmes isn't so brilliant, so he doesn't chronicle those. And those are the extremes, he says, right?
It means that basically what he's doing is he's curating in the same way that any of us who are on social media curate our posts. Image crafting, if you will. He's building the legend of Sherlock Holmes by not including the mundane.
Yeah. And he says the examples of those extremes are Study in Scarlet and Gloria Scott, which doesn't make as much sense to me, because Study in Scarlet, Holmes is brilliant, but the story's not great. I mean, that murder and the way he investigates it and figures, like, I think the story's great too. And in Gloria Scott, that must be the other extreme, in which the story is great, but Holmes isn't brilliant.
Yeah.
I could go there, sure.
I could go there.
A lot of dramatic interest, but Holmes doesn't really do anything, So, but Watson calls these the Scylla and Charybdis of the stories. They are the extremes that Watson navigates. Now, you can all look up Scylla and Charybdis in Greek mythology. You can read about Odysseus navigating the way between the sea monsters. But I work at the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where we have the complete manuscript for Joyce's Ulysses. So for me, Scylla and Charybdis is the 9th episode when Stephen Dedalus goes to the library and talks about Hamlet. So that's what Scylla and Charybdis is to me, as we're starting to gear up for our Bloomsday celebration this year.
Oh, yes. Actually, what day is Bloomsday?
June 16th.
Ah, June 16th. Nice.
I'm busy June 16th every year.
Gotcha.
Because we have a big outdoor festival at the Rosenbach on our street, close off a street, thousands of people read Ulysses from 11 to 8 at night. It's a lot of fun. You should all come if you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area. We've had people come.
Yes.
And just travel for that. It's a lot of fun. It's really great. All righty. So Doyle has also made this whole opening, and the way he's talked about this. This is kind of a common thing. Almost common. This is the 5th story that he's done this, where he opens it by saying, sometimes, and it's mostly the same kind of argument that he uses each time. He did this in 5 Orange Pips, Speckled Band, Engineer's Thumb, and Cardboard Box, where he kind of says, oh, sometimes I choose a story for this and sometimes for that, and that's why I have here. So it's become a recurring way for him to get started here.
Exactly. It's like the rationalization or justification for, why am I telling you this story?
Yeah. On these memoirs, this is and it's kind of like a writer thing, it seems to me, that how do I get this story going? Like, there's only so many openings you can have for these stories about these 2 recurring characters who are going to solve a mystery. And this is one of the things that he puts in there to happen. One of the other things that he relies on is they look out the window and see somebody, or somebody
Yeah.
just pops in suddenly. He's got now, I think, 4 stories so far, so 3 where Watson's at home and Sherlock stops by. That's another way he can start these
Yes,
stories.
or Watson stops by,
Yeah.
passes by Baker Street and thus stops by. I mean, I have to admit though, like, I mean, even when like I'm doing research articles, the openings are the hardest. Like, I'm good with the meat, I'm good with like the stuff, but how do I like begin the essay? I apologize to the Australians. I'm actually in the process of reworking an essay right now for publication for the Sydney Passengers. And yeah, the opening has been vexing me. I probably spent about 6 hours tinkering with just 2 paragraphs yesterday because openings are bloody hard. So, I'm not gonna judge Doyle too much or Watson too much.
Well, it doesn't matter. They all seem to work. He's gifted enough as an author to make it all kind of blend together nicely. And I always feel like, this works well and
Mhm.
however you come to open it. But as we read through these in this kind of methodical way, I
Mhm.
start to see the patterns that happen.
Yeah.
Watson lets us know that he can't be sure the exact date, for some of my memoranda upon the matter have been mislaid. He doesn't even have all the facts that he would like to have for this one. Um, but it is the end of the first year during which Holmes and I shared chambers in Baker Street, and there was boisterous October weather. So he gives a time frame,
Yep.
not like by day, at least, and not by year. And I think this is interesting in that Doyle is becoming aware that the
Yeah.
con that the conceit that he has created for his characters that makes him now have to explain when this adventure
Yeah.
occurs, you know? So
he's
like,
he's understanding that there now has to be some sort of chronology
yeah,
ish or timeline, that
are they living together? Are they
are they
not
really
living
not?
together? How much do they know each other? And he set this up, and I don't even think he intended to. That's just the way it worked out. And then suddenly now he's got to always figure it out. The It's October, and I'll let the chronologist fight about when this story really occurs. Although I have to mention briefly, J. Finley Chris says it's 26 October 1882. Baring Gould says it's 6 October 1886. Les Klinger says it's 1887. It's like, I'll take Watson at his word that it's a story that occurred
In October.
in October before he married Mary Morstan. And that's all I need to know to
Yes.
situate the story in the relationship of Sherlock and Watson. I don't even need to
Somewhere
know the
between
month.
1881 and
Yeah.
1887-ish. Yes,
I don't even
something.
need to know the month. I don't need to know the year. I just need to
Sounds
know when that is and their relationship. That's the most important part that I think has to
Mhm.
come into play here. Um, and also we get this touch here that he says it's a boisterous October weather, and Watson says, I feared with my shaken health to face the keen autumn wind. That's something we haven't heard in a while now in the
Yeah.
stories. I mean, those first couple stories, Study in Scarlet and Sign of Four, we were just reminded
Mhm.
over that Watson's like, oh, and my health is so bad, and I can't walk all this far, and I'm really affected by it. Then
Mhm.
it went away. He
Yeah.
mentioned his wound a couple times and how maybe he felt it, but he never seemed inhibited by it.
Yes.
But Doyle is putting that back in the story, I guess, because it's in his mind. He has purposefully set it at a
Mhm.
certain time, and now he's kind of placed
Well,
Watson back in time. That's good for Doyle
yeah.
to pay attention to his chronology.
Oh, very, very much so. Plus, I mean, it definitely, harkens back to an earlier time before Watson had kind of worked through his own, we'll just say, mental health crises to become the Dr. Watson that we know.
Yep.
Yeah.
The the next part is Holmes is doing chemical experiments,
Mm.
and suddenly a test tube breaks, and he sprang from his chair with an exclamation of impatience and a clouded brow. A day's work ruined, Watson. Uh, and what do
Yep.
you What do you say to a ramble through London? Um,
Why not?
Usually he's, he's not. We've heard that Holmes didn't like to take exercise for exercise sake and yellow face. Uh,
Mhm.
um, but but it seems like this works really well for his character because he needs to clear his head because the chemistry experiment has failed, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Basically, he needs a break. He needs a change of pace.
He needs to keep his mind engaged in
Yeah,
some way, and
exactly.
and at least he's not shooting up cocaine right now. Instead,
It's yeah, better coping skill right now, taking a walk versus
3 hour
everything
a
else.
3 hour walk that they take.
Hey, it's like Gilligan's Island, the 3 hour tour.
I'm going to share the illustration for this because I love it. This is Holmes and Watson strolling the streets of London at night, arm in arm. I love this. This is so cool looking. Look at them there. These
Yep.
these two friends here, arm in arm. When men could do this, and I mean, men could do it now, but people have stopped. Men stopped doing this for a very long time.
Yes.
Um, and uh, and there they are, arm in arm, walking down the street. Holmes with his walking stick, and
Mhm.
Watson muffled up here, and you can tell he's got some kind of muffler up all the way around his chin here.
With
So,
a 90-degree day, no less.
well, it was changed, and later, then a couple paragraphs later, it became it became cold, and it became cold, and he has to take care of his health. So there we go.
True. The inconsistencies are so much fun.
Arm in arm, two buddies. I love that.
Oh.
So they return 3 hours later.
Hmm.
Carriage outside, that we get the whole like Holmes, oh, it's a doctor's general practitioner. Uh
Hmm.
um Not been long in practice
No.
by looking at it. And then Watson starts Watson says, I was sufficiently conversant with Holmes's methods to be
Hmm.
able to follow his reasoning and to see
Yes.
that the nature and state of the various medical instruments in the wicker basket, which hung in the lamplight,
Yep.
um, had given him the swift deduction. And So Watson kind of, you know, sees it as well, which I really
Yes. Hmm.
um
Oh yeah.
he understands Holmes's deductions. It's not like Holmes says this and Watson's like, well, how on earth do you know that, my good fellow? I mean, he doesn't do that. And he does that in too many stories. I did not realize how many
Hmm.
stories he did it in until we did this show. Now,
Oh
I
yeah.
know people have, in other media, especially in adaptations, have exaggerated Watson and made him kind of bumbling, like the Nigel Bruce thing.
Yeah, little Nigel Bruce going on.
But I didn't think that it was, he does it too much. So, but
I'm,
he's,
I'm I started reading into them like some sarcasm of, "Oh my God, Holmes, how did you do that?"
yeah, that would be really funny. Oh, how did you know that? So, um,
Exactly.
they, but they, and he does, I'm even wondering if this is the first time in the stories that this occurs, right? That
Hmm.
Watson doesn't ask him how he
Yeah.
knows he's made this observation. Uh,
Yeah.
So, but they head in, and then when they go in, we even get Watson making Watson's, it's more than
Mhm.
a description. He does what Holmes does here.
A little bit. Yes.
A pale, taper-faced man with sandy whiskers. This is Percy Trevelyan. His age may have not been more than
Yep.
3 or 4 and 30. Um, but then it gets into his haggard expression and unhealthy youth, told of a life which had sapped his strength and robbed him of his youth. His manner was nervous and
Yes.
shy, like a sensitive gentleman. Looked more like an artist than a surgeon. Watson's doing the Holmes thing. Watson is figuring out by the way you appear, what is
Mhm.
your character like? So, and then
Yeah,
Percy,
but he's not doing it in the fun way. Yeah.
yeah, he's coming up,
Yeah.
but he's still coming off sharp. in this story to begin with, I think. So, well, it's Dr. Percy Trevelyan, who lives at 403 Brook Street. Watson again, all it was like, did you write what is it?
Oh,
The author of a monograph upon obscure nervous
oh,
lesions? So
totally. It's he doesn't have the pen.
I'm I'm losing you a bit here on the feed.
There we go. I think
I've got you frozen, Monica. She'll come back. There we go. It happens with live feeds. So, they are he wants to yes, Percy recognizes that this has actually occurred. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Percy recognize oh, he's shocked. I can't believe that, somebody's recognized the work that he has written. And especially like an obscure nervous lesion.
I mean, I
And
have to admit, it's nice when somebody recognizes something that just feels like really obscure. A couple of weeks ago, I got a cold call at the office. Somebody actually wanted me to do a lecture for their, for one of their classes at Catholic University in DC, because they had read one of my essays in an anthology that I contributed to back in 2016.
yeah.
It's just it's gratifying when somebody like reads something that like you think is very specialist and like very obscure, and then actually like years later contacts you and says, hey, I read that, you should do this thing for me,
Yep.
or I read that and I thought it was brilliant. It's wonderful.
Well, you have been like Percy Trevelyan here. So
I shall claim my Percy Trevelyan-ness and embrace it and enjoy it, because it doesn't happen very often. Most of my clients just think I'm a little bit bonkers. They're not cool.
well, he has come to them because he needs advice and assistance from Sherlock, as he puts it. And then Sherlock Holmes sat down and lit his pipe. Yeah, I like that. So usually the pipe is for thinking. Usually the listening part doesn't necessarily require the smoking. So this time he is going to sit down and light his pipe.
Smoke and think. Think, think,
Um,
think.
well, Trevelyan tells his story here. He said, I shall lay it all before you. You shall judge what is essential and what is not. Um, he did great research. He went to King's College Hospital.
Mhm.
Didn't Watson go there too? Hmm.
I thought Watson was the University of London.
Okay. I don't
Yeah, versus
remember.
King's College. Yeah.
All righty.
Yeah.
Well, he does the somebody can correct us. A Sherlockian will correct us if
That they
has
will.
gotten it wrong in the chat. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I really should know this just because I just did a presentation on Watson's PTSD. So looking at Watson's history,
yeah.
basically like hyper analyzing the first chapter of the Sign of Four, or sorry, the Study in Scarlet. But yeah, I think it's University of London.
Well, they are he did research into the pathology of catalepsy. He won the Bruce Pinkerton Prize. Um, and he'd love to start out a practice, but to do that, you need to be in Cavendish Square, where all the great practices start. But all
Yep.
the, all the good doctors' offices, I think Doyle's was around this area, maybe not exactly Cavendish Square, but not that far from it. Um, and
Mhm.
they and somebody comes in one day. Blessington is his name, and he says he has a
Mhm.
few thousands to invest, and he would like to invest in Percy Trevelyan. Um,
Mhm.
that uh he'll set him up, he'll pay for the house, he'll
He'll
pay
pay
for all
for
the
everything.
quarters, everything is on him, but then when they make money from the patients, it's a 75-25 split. um
Which, given the circumstances, is actually pretty good, in terms of like if he's living there and whatnot. I mean, I have to admit I pay a 35% cut for this office space and for my admin staff to do all the things that they do. So,
Yeah,
I'm paying 35% and I don't live there.
yeah. So it's not actually a terrible deal that he has, and you figure
No,
over time he could really,
rake in
he,
some cash.
and he could save his own money and do all that kind of stuff. It's actually, it seems to be a pretty good deal. Also, this whole story, Trevelyan's telling a story, and we have this all
Mhm.
the time because clients have to come in and tell their story. But
Of
again,
course.
it's just another reminder to me that Sherlock stories are about telling stories.
Mhm.
It is very important that we rely on characters to tell us stories within what we as a reader are reading as a story. And this is the
Mhm.
device that Doyle has really, that Doyle really utilizes in the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's stories within stories. It's like Inception that way,
yeah,
but versus dreams within dreams. But
and stories reveal truth.
exactly.
And we will have a challenge to that in this, and how quickly it's like you can't tell a wrong story or you're
Yeah.
out. They move in, well, he moves in on moving into the house next Lady Day. This is in the
Mhm.
past, based on the story. Lady Day, for those who don't know, is March 25th. It's the feast of the Annunciation, when the angel came down and said, Mary, you're pregnant with Jesus. But in England, because of the way the quarters went, it's always some kind of holiday, and the Lady Day falling on March 25th is the first quarter day of the year. So
Mhm.
that's when your rent is due. So if you move into some place, you do it on that first day because that's when rent is due anyway. It's also the beginning of the new year in older calendars. It's like
Mm.
hundreds of years ago, this would have been the beginning of the new year.
Spring. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then Blessington moves into the house as
The
his
resident patient.
resident patient. So
We
the
have a
story
we have a
title.
title in the text. It's a rare thing. We have a title in the text.
And yes, and that doesn't happen that often in Sherlock stories.
Oh,
We get that. A place will be mentioned or something will be mentioned about it. I mean, Silver Blaze is kind of hard not to, but
yeah.
this kind of, phrase, the resident patient, when it comes, I still always stop when I'm watching a movie and somebody gives the movie title. It's like dun dun dun. Uh,
Exactly. It's like, wait, I saw what you did there.
but he has lived with him in the character of a resident patient because his heart is weak, it appears, and he needed constant medical supervision. Uh,
Mhm.
and everything works out. Oh, and Doyle also had a resident patient when he was still practicing medicine.
Interesting.
And
Tell me more.
it also led to his meeting his wife. He was like a relation of, what's her name? Louisa? What's her name? His first name?
Yes, well, Tui is what he called
Dewey.
her. Oh, yeah.
Um, one of her relations was very ill, and he becomes a resident patient of Doyle's very briefly. And he dies. And so this is a kind of another way that Doyle is kind of using his life for, this is, I understand what it is to have a resident patient or whatever. Louise's brother,
Yeah.
specifically. Um,
Okay.
we've heard from Madeline in the chat. Thanks, Madeline.
Thanks, Madeline.
There is a podcast called The Doings of Doyle,
Ah, yes.
that Paul M. Chapman and Mark Jones do, a couple British chaps. And Doyle, the Doings of Doyle podcast is dedicated to the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Professor Challenger, Brigadier Gerard, and Sherlock Holmes. So they do this podcast where they talk about Doyle's life and different stories. Occasionally, they'll do a Sherlock Holmes story, but they do other
Mhm.
ones as well. And they have an episode on the resident patient, and
Yes.
that is where I picked up this information on the uh on the Doyle having a resident patient, because I didn't remember from the bio, but I probably should have.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Well, I really need to go back. I am rubbish at podcasts, so I have all of these podcasts that I need to consume. So yeah, I got to go back and do that.
I've put the link in the live chat too to that episode. Um,
Excellent.
it's a really good episode. It's worth listening to, especially after you watch or listen to this one. You can listen to that one because they approach things very different. They're not getting drunk the whole show either and doing that.
Mhm.
So uh, they talk about that, about Doyle having a resident patient, but they also have all this interesting connections with the real life criminal Adam Worth and how
Mhm.
he may have really inspired this story. So rather than me tread over all that material or tell you what they said, because I didn't have it in my notes, but I listened to theirs, I was like, wow, that's a podcast you can go to hear
Yeah.
about some other things that may have inspired Doyle in creating this story.
Mhm.
Highly recommended doing Doyle. Trevelyan prospers. From the first, it was a success and everything's going really well. And then suddenly one day, some weeks ago, Blessington comes down and in a state of considerable agitation. And he said that
Mhm.
he's heard about some burglary in the area. And he's terrified that they're going to be burgled. So they have to put they have to he says he is his manner, it struck me that he was in mortal dread of something or somebody. um
Yep.
and they put stronger bolts on the windows and doors and make sure the house is more secure.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
then he seems to
Chill
that
and
seems to
relax
go
a
away.
little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah. Well, I mean, paranoia, everyone's coming to get me. It's not really paranoia if they actually are coming to get you. But of course, Trevelyan doesn't know this.
Now Trevelyan doesn't seem to figure anything out in this story.
He's just accepting what is.
Yeah,
He's not attempting to see or observe. He's just accepting what is told to him at face value, which
especially
you know,
from Blessington. I mean, he's concerned and he doesn't quite, understand why he's being, so. And well, even later too in the story, that well, he doesn't understand why Blessington's being so, extreme about,
Mhm.
these things that are happening, but he doesn't seem to be able to figure anything out. Um, he should be sharper. The
Should
author of
be.
that great monograph on nervous lesions should be sharper than this.
Well, should be, but you also have to remember is that sometimes I'll just say sometimes genius appears in some little like specialty areas and not in others. I know someone very near and dear to my heart who has a ridiculously high IQ who forgot to pack shorts when we went on a trip to Mexico. So I'm not going to sit here and judge Trevelyan too much for not seeing or observing here. He's just rolling with it, and he's just focused on seeing clients making money, seeing clients making money, being
We
in the hustle.
good thing we don't travel together. I'd go to Mexico and you'd be like, Ed, why do you have all these tweed suits? I'd be like, what? I can't wear my tweed suits. No, yeah,
In Mexico.
it would be
You
my
need
problem.
linen, dude. You need linen.
It would be my problem too. So,
Oh yes, no, I've almost bought made Bill get a linen suit or something to wear
oh, it was
in
Bill.
poor Bill
There you go. Makes you drinks, and then you call him out on the show for not
for getting shorts in Mexico.
not
No,
packing the right clothes.
I love you, Bill.
Well,
Ew.
Blessington's worried, and in the meantime, he Trevelyan gets a letter from it that says a Russian nobleman who is now resident in England would be glad to avail himself of the professional assistance of Dr. Percy Trevelyan. He has been for some years a victim to cataleptic attacks.
Ooh.
which, as is well known, Dr. Trevelyan is an authority, and he's going to come by and see him. Now, we've all read this story, everybody watching, so we know this is the gang, and they're trying to get an entry into the house,
Hmm.
and we also know at some point that they get the page is their,
Hmm.
is their accomplice to help them. They've really done their research on this
Oh
place.
yeah.
So,
No, to fake catatonia, actually, like legitimate catatonia is like hard. I haven't seen many client like over the years that I've been a mental health counselor, I haven't seen too many people who actually were catatonic,
yeah.
or at least were presenting catatonically convincingly. Um, you know,
Maybe people can fake it better now because they do Zoom where things freeze. And so they're used to seeing that. It's like, that's how I do it. I just pretend I'm on Zoom frozen. I didn't freeze, everybody. I know I tricked you. So, well, they, yeah, well, what I love is that they've really done their homework. This is a smart gang. They figured out this thing. This is the way into the house. This is a serious con to get in there. And they have one of them has to pretend he's a nobleman. Oh, I will say one thing I picked up from I think I picked it up on Doings and Doyle. I can't remember.
Mhm.
Um, I might not have. But it was why did he choose Rush? Why did they choose a Russian nobleman?
Hmm. And it's a
It
good
makes
question. Why?
it makes sense because that's not likely a language that Trevelyan would know. That they could have
Sure.
that if they had picked a European language closer, he might of all they know that he could know French, he could know German, like
Hmm.
it wouldn't be that unlikely, but they tend to pick something that is, not quite there. And the whole fact of, the the idea of the anarchists and in the press and this makes me think of Joseph Conrad's Secret Agent novel, uh,
Exactly.
uh, which is a little bit later than this, but it's still that same idea and the breadth that the anarchists are out there and Russian and the Russians are the what how people picture those kinds of
Mhm.
dangerous people.
Yeah.
Well, he catalepsy, for those who don't know, for those who don't read Edgar Allan Poe stories, because it does feature in a few Poe stories, Premature Burial, Fall House of Usher, Berenice, all stories where someone suffers from catalepsy and is afraid of, or actually happens where people think that they're dead and they get buried.
Hmm.
Um, it is a kind of trance you go into, right? Loss of consciousness, kind of rigidity. So,
Hmm.
like a Zoom freeze.
Exactly.
There we go. Um, they uh it wouldn't work if I was smoking though, because the smoke would need to freeze too. Um, they so this is the they need to come and then when they come in, the two of them come in, and it is the old one is the old Russian nobleman, and the other one, he says, I was much more struck by the appearance of his companion. This was a tall young man, surprisingly handsome, with a dark, fierce face and the limbs and chest of a
Oh,
Hercules.
Hercules.
Who
Hercules.
else? Who else is
Hercules.
described like that in the canon?
I can't remember who.
King of Bohemia.
Oh, right.
Like, yeah, that the
Uh,
big chest like a Hercules. I think he even uses Hercules. Does he? I'm pretty sure
we
he
might
does.
have to look that up.
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay. It's been a hot
Yup,
minute for
yup.
me.
A man
Hercules.
entered who could hardly have been less than 6 feet 6 inches in height with the chest and limbs of a Hercules. So, King of Bohemia. Not
Hercules.
only that, but the drawing looks like him too. Where is it? Where is it? Here it is.
Yes, show us the draw. Yeah, show us
Here's
the
the
image.
illustration side by side. On the right, this is one of the criminals here. Look at the mustache.
Oh
Look
my.
at the King of Bohemia. Same mustache.
Oh my.
They both are Hercules. And so it's the mustache was the giveaway here.
Oh, totally.
So. The King of Bohemia was a bank robber in this game. He's fallen. So actually, he hasn't, right? This is before Scandal, this story.
Yes.
Because Scandal
So yeah,
happens after Watson is married. Am I correct?
correct. Yes. Yeah. Scandal is like, yes, after Watson is married.
So the
So
King of
yes,
Bohemia got involved with this bank
big
robbery gang,
rubber.
probably through Irene Adler. She knew them and introduced them, and then he robbed
Oh,
them.
yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, she's a bad lady.
Well, that is but he's a big guy with him, and he doesn't utilize that, which is interesting. They never kind
Yeah.
of bring that up. So
Yeah,
like
he may be a big guy, but he never uses his bigness
yeah.
at all or his physical prowess. Yeah.
It's just, oh, he's just a real big guy like a Hercules. But then if you're gonna say that, why aren't you utilizing that in your story? But
Yeah. It needs to be like Chekhov's Hercules.
yeah. So if you're gonna be a Hercules, you better use it in the last act, right? Uh
Yeah,
they
exactly.
uh well, while they're there, the young man doesn't go in with him because he's casing the house. And although we'll talk about this later as to what's actually going on here.
Mhm.
But while Percy is treating the old Russian nobleman, he goes into a cataleptic fit. So he rushes out to get his nitrate what is it? Nitrate of
Amyl
amyl?
nitrate, essentially. Yes.
I don't understand why it's nitrite. I always thought it was nitrate. In the story, it's nitrite. I've looked it up online. It's nitrate. I don't know why people say nitrate, or maybe that's just a common thing. Do you know the
It's
difference?
just, yeah, it's well, tomato. Let's call the whole
Okay.
thing up. Yeah.
Well, it's nitrite of amyl is what he calls it. That he's discovered, Percy, that if you smell this, it will help cataleptic.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, it is technically it is na amyl nitrite.
Yes.
But we say nitrate because we're Americans and we're not very good with
Okay.
our
Yeah.
vowels.
There you go.
So yeah.
That's what it is. But it's a depressant. It's an inhalant. It relaxes the blood vessels, increases the supply of blood and oxygen to the heart. Also gets you stoned. And that's what he's going to get. And when he comes back, the patient is gone.
Yes.
And everybody's gone. Imagine my amazement to find the room empty and the patient gone. He doesn't think he's going to hear from them again. And then sure enough, they come right back. Uh, this evening of that when he's come to Holmes. They have come back later today, they came back and they said they were sorry, and he was out. The old man walked out and the son's like, hey, where are you going? And he went to farm. This is their cover story.
Yes.
And that's why they left. But they have to come back again.
Second time.
This is why it all so and then this is when he definitely goes into because when Blessington comes home now after they've been there for their appointment, Blessington comes in, somebody's been in my rooms. But
Mm,
why do they need to do it twice? I don't quite recognize why this happens this way, and I'm not even 100% sure of what they're doing.
yeah. Well, I mean, casing the joint, but also like looking, I would imagine looking for evidence, one, in terms of like, is this the person that they think it is? I don't want to get into
Well,
spoilers.
of course they
Is
know. Of course they know who it is. I mean,
well, of course,
they put
well,
a page in the house and everything, right?
yes, but the page, I will just say the page isn't confirmation enough, of basically like who this is in wrongdoing. The page didn't know Sutton before Sutton became Blessington. I mean, the page didn't know. The page was just there in league with whomever it is.
So
Um, uh, you know, I would imagine that this is all about um, basically gathering additional evidence and also casing the joint in terms of if they are planning on doing what like they actually do, like where is the appropriate place to do that thing?
So he went
Um,
into his room this time, but maybe he didn't
yeah,
go into his room the first time, but
yeah.
I still don't, you know, I mean, they know he's gone from the house then. So this is clearly, this is the information they must have learned from the page that
Hmm.
Lexington takes his walk this time of the day every day. So they know they can go to the house without him seeing them and
Hmm.
they could case the joint. But
Yep.
it just seems unusual to me that Doyle never explains why they had to come twice.
Yeah,
So they couldn't get in the room the first time. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't,
possibly.
nothing kind of, makes sense in this way. And I just think it's a little bit of a lapse in the story that I thought I'd hit me right away like, what are they doing? Because it's such a great elaborate con that they're putting on that I pay attention to it.
Yeah.
But they do it the second time, and this time they've definitely gone into his room, or at least the big guy has. Um, and because you can see his footprints upon the light carpet. Man, their carpets suck in this house because it's just raining and like the footprints are everywhere. They're there the next day too. Like
Yeah.
everybody's footprints
All
stay
the
on these
dirt.
carpets.
This is why you should not have light-colored carpet.
That's what it
Which is
is, man.
exactly what we have in our house, by the way, is light-colored carpet.
Do you make everyone take their shoes off?
We really should, but we
I hate
don't.
when
We
people
just
do
we
that.
just clean the carpet a lot.
Sorry to all my friends or family who make me take my shoes off. Well, you probably already know I hate taking my shoes off.
I do too. That's why I said that's
I
why we
wear
clean
shoes
the
all day
carpet.
long. So I'm not a
I
barefoot person. I
Yeah.
don't like to walk around in
Well,
my socks or bare feet. I put shoes on, I put a vest on, I'm fully dressed every day. I'm
well,
comfortable dressed.
if I'm at home and I'm just chilling, I'm barefoot because that's
No,
comfy.
I don't
But
even do that. I'm not comfortable in bare feet, not at all. Except when I'm in
okay.
bed. No socks. I'm
No,
always
no, no, no socks in bed. No, that there's
there's
something wrong with
more
that.
information than people want to know, clearly. But it does mean that when I have to be barefoot for some reason outside or something, it hurts. I'm
Well, yeah, you have very sensitive little
very
feet. Yes,
tender. So
very
big,
tender
I have
feet.
sensitive big feet. That's what I have. All righty.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just shocked at how these footprints stay. Like it's it's a little bit of a stretch. If it was outside in the ground, you understand where they stay overnight, but like these footprints stick around, and then later Holmes sees the same footprints when he's going to come to the house, and the next
Mhm.
day he's able to read three sets of footprints just on the carpet in the house. I mean, what were they walking
Well, it
through
depends
a
on the
muddy
length of the
field?
carpet, I guess, and just how many people have trounced the carpet.
Yeah, but it's important in this, and it. I always love it when Holmes can figure things out by looking at footprints anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. Well, let's take
Yes.
my mid break right now and remind everyone that I don't have my mid break document to thank you all for watching this show and to asking you and to reminding you that as a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to thousands of fellow Sherlockians worldwide. I hope you will
Mhm.
consider supporting the Rosenbach and Sherlock Mondays by donation, which you can do at our website or by becoming a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, and exclusive invitations to member-only events. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. Part of our membership is also early access to program and course registration. There are lots of great in-person programs as well. Member registration is now open. Early access, that benefit, it means that people who are members are registering for courses and programs that we have on March 21st, 2024. This week, as we're airing live, registration opens for the general public. And one of the new in-person we have a course on Plato's dialogues, Monica, in
Ooh,
person. You have to be able to come
I
or
am.
back.
Oh, I can't afford the plane tickets from
But there
Iowa.
are, yeah, that would be a lot for, plane and I would waive tuition though if you were flying in for every class meeting. Um, online courses. We have two of them. One of them is going to be on Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude.
Ooh.
Another one is a course taught by Juliet Wells who taught our Emma online course last year. This one is on David Copperfield and Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead, which is a retelling of Copperfield, and the Armando Iannucci 2019 movie of David Copperfield with Dev Patel.
Oh,
So it's going to be a
oh, and I
fabulous.
love I love Dev Patel.
Highly recommend that one. I'm also giving, I mentioned earlier in the show, a behind the bookcase tour of our Sherlock Holmes materials and some of our other detective related items in our collections at the Rosenbach on April 4th. That is in person. If you ever wanted to hold a Sherlock manuscript in your hands, this is your chance, and you can meet me. So I'll be there.
I mean, you know, it's worth
I'm gonna
it.
wear my deer stalker. I can meet me in person with a deer stalker on my head.
It's worth it just for that. It's worth it just for that. Add in a deer stalker.
Well, you don't want to miss also our Sherlock Mondays Hound of the Baskervilles biblioventure when Sherlock Mondays comes to a close with the adventure of the empty house. We have one more Sherlockian biblioventure to take you on. We are having an exclusive pay-only series on the Hound of the Baskervilles, 8 episodes available by paid subscription only that will run on the Mondays in May and June. 8 episodes, same format. A wonderful co-host, Monica, will be in it, and the other co-hosts that we have will be in it. We're talking about the story, and actually it's 7 parts, and then the 8th episode will be the legacy of the Hound. We can talk about adaptations and all kinds of stuff in that one. Registration's open now for everyone. Don't even need to be a member. We're just open registration for everyone. So the cost is $80, which works out to only $10 an episode. But if you're a member, $50. I don't do the math, so I can't even do that math for 8 episodes of $50 with. But that's like a crazy deal.
6 and some change. Yes,
I'll let you math
650.
people do that.
Yes, 650. Yes, 650.
We are going to take you to Dartmoor, where a strange diabolical hound haunts the moors, preying upon the heirs of Baskerville Hall. What will the logically reasoning Sherlock Holmes do when faced with the supernatural creature? You don't want to miss out on the Hound of the Baskervilles biblio venture. I hope you will all join me for that one. All right, let's get back to resident patient Blessington now. After the second time they've been in, comes rushing in. Someone has been in my room. He's like some 14-year-old, like, Mom, someone was in my room. Like, just chill, will you? My privacy. I had a sign that says, get out. Nobody's allowed in.
No girls allowed.
So there you go. He has found footprints on the carpet. Trevelyan's like, well, it must have been one of the guys, sure, but nothing was stolen. And nothing was stolen. So, and then he actually sat crying in an armchair. So he's pretty upset by that. I'm sorry, I'm making fun of you, Mr. Blessington, but you were really upset by, I don't know, you're a criminal anyway, I don't care.
Yeah, don't be sad.
So, but he's very upset by this. He is really, this is really put him over the edge. So, but nothing was stolen. So he told Trevor, go get Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes can save me, I guess he says. We don't have his exact words. Holmes had listened to this long narrative with an intentness which showed me that his interest was keenly aroused. His face was as impassive as ever, but his lids had drooped more heavily over his eyes, and the smoke had curled up more quickly from his pipe to emphasize each curious episode in the doctor's tale. I like that. So again, Watson observing and making deductions from his observation. By the way he saw the smoke coming out of the pipe, he connected it with parts in this tale. Watson's pretty sharp.
Yeah, Watson is sharp. I mean, and this
For
is one
now.
of the reasons why I hate the whole bumbling Watson portrayal, because it's like the dude's a doctor, the dude's intelligent, he's picking up on Holmes's methodology. He's not an unintelligent human being.
Percy Trevelyan's not that sharp. So there you go.
No.
But Watson pack his shorts going to Mexico?
Bill has an IQ of 147. I gave him an IQ test when I was in college. So I know my ginger is superior, but he still forgets to pack shorts in Mexico.
Watson wouldn't because he remembers his army days, and
Army days
he would
and yes,
pack
in the
correctly
tropics.
and quickly. He's told us that in
Yes,
stories. He knows how to quickly get ready and pack. So, all righty.
yes.
Well, Holmes says Holmes just like, let's go. And all right, let's go. And so
Let's go. Let's
they
go.
head off to Brook Street, and when they get there, Blessington threatens them with a pistol. I have a pistol. That he is so terrified that he's just, pulling out of his in the dark. He's like, put the lights out of the house. Light goes out, and then he yells, I have a pistol. Um, and because he's afraid that it's these guys coming to get him. Um, they we get a little description of his appearance, which is weird. He was very fat, but it apparently at some time been much fatter, so that the skin
Yeah.
hung about his face in loose pouches like the cheeks of a bloodhound, and he was of a
Mhm.
sickly color. What do you make of this description of his appearance?
Well, I mean, okay. The way that I kind of like embrace this is that he's he was a well-fed, chubby fella who essentially lost weight because of stress. I look at that as like stress weight loss because the dude's been stressed out for the last several weeks because he's essentially been stalked by, what we know as or what we know later to be former members of his gang. Basically, I mean, he's going to meet his maker. He knows he's going to meet his maker. It becomes a matter of time.
Hmm.
That's stressful. And that probably causes someone to, we'll just say eat or well, not eat in this case. And, so when that happens, basically you have rapid weight loss. And when you have rapid weight loss, you basically get kind of the saggy
Yeah.
skin. Yeah.
He doesn't, because Trevelyan doesn't describe him earlier as fat. This is just something that we find out now. Um,
Yeah.
but I do find it interesting that both Trevelyan and him have a kind of haggard expression, unhealthy hue is what Trevelyan
Mhm.
has. And
Yeah.
so these are two men here under some serious strain, but
Yeah.
Trevelyan shouldn't be real. I mean, he's maybe worried about, Blessington, but he shouldn't be really, under strain. So, well, that's Blessington, and then they say, "Wait, it's us. Don't shoot us." um, and Holmes right away says, "Why are who are these two men, Mr. Blessington, and why do they wish to molest you?" And
Yes, that's a good question.
it's like he asks the exact question that you're supposed to ask. Like Holmes already knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't know." And Holmes, "Do you mean that you don't know?" And then he tells him to come into his room. He shows him his big black box. Look at my big black box. This is where I keep all my money. Um, I don't trust bankers, which is funny knowing that he's a bank robber. Like, of course, it would be
Yeah.
better if he was actually using a bank. Like, that would be funny.
That would be hilarious.
But he doesn't. He keeps his money. Well, he knows people can rob the bank, and this is the days. I don't know if they're insured, and I don't know, what the law. You could in the past you could lose money if somebody robbed the bank, but I don't know
Yes.
how secure the money is then or insured it is. But then Holmes looked at Blessington in his questioning way and shook his head.
Yes.
Do you have that?
Sorry. Yes. Holmes looked at Blessington in the questioning way and shook his head.
You read Holmes, I'll read Blessington.
Yes. What? I cannot possibly advise you if I or if you try to deceive me,
But I
said
have told you everything.
Holmes turned on his heel and with a gesture of disgust. Good night, Dr. Trevelyan. Said he.
And no advice for me? Cried Blessington in a breaking voice.
My advice to you, sir, is to speak the truth.
Speak the truth. People tell the
Oh,
truth in their stories and Sherlock Holmes stories. And the second
Yes.
somebody doesn't, Holmes is like, nah,
Nah,
happening.
nah. Homie, don't play that.
That's not what detective stories are even about.
Exactly. Speak the truth,
You
or
tell
homie,
the
don't play
truth
that.
and then, things
Yeah.
get solved. So,
Yep.
it's just like it's stop lying. But he just walks out and then he just leaves. Like, I'm gone. I'm out of here.
Uses.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Watson, to bring on a fool's errand. Now we finally get it, right? Finally, took the whole story. I can make little of it, I confessed. Come on, Watson. Really? You didn't
Watson,
know?
yeah, after all those observations, all those deductions, how could you not?
So close. Um,
So close.
Watson then has to do I have no idea what's going on here. But I mean, he's the reader, right? I have no idea what's going on. This is the way most people would read these stories. Now, this one I think you're tipped a little heavier. So, I think that you probably recognize that it's these guys are in his room. You don't know why yet. But these guys are after
Yep.
Blessington. I think Watson should have figured this one out. So
Yep.
Watson even Holmes says and then Holmes starts to explain it. The boat on both or on both on the first and on the second occasion, the young man got into Blessington's room while the Russian nobleman supposedly kept the doctor from interfering. Watson says, "The catalepsy, a fraudulent imitation. It's very easy complaint to imitate. I have done it myself.
Yes.
Monica, you haven't had Holmes as a patient. You'd have been like,
No, no, I have not. I've been
you'd have
very
been
lucky that way.
You'd have been rushing for the amyl nitrite, man. Oh my gosh. Rush out. There you go.
Let's rock some poppers. Yes, let's rock some poppers, Holmes. Actually, Holmes would have really enjoyed that. So,
He would have,
maybe, yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
All righty. Holmes lets him know that well, tells Watson that if they were just after money, they would have made some attempt to search for it. So he says, I can read in a man's eye, when it is own skin that he is frightened for. It is inconceivable that this fellow could have made two such vindictive enemies as they appear to be without
Yep.
knowing of it. So I hold
Yes.
it therefore to be certain that he does know who these men are, and that for reasons of his own he suppresses it. It is just possible that tomorrow may find him in a more communicative mood.
Mood.
It's just funny knowing the end of the story.
Which is hilarious considering how it turns out.
I think he's not
Oh
going to be
boy.
more communicative. I think Holmes failed.
We need a Ouija board to make
Yeah.
him more
So
communicative.
I love this. Watson comes up. Hey, maybe Trevelyan's making it up. Maybe he's doing that. This is smart. And Holmes recognizes it. He says that's one of the first solutions, which occurred to me. But footprints, I saw the footprints, so I knew that he wasn't making it up. They were at the
Yeah,
same feet as Trevelyan. So there you go. Holmes is
exactly.
smarter. Holmes is smarter than Watson. Thank you, Sherlock, once again for reminding us. Um, Poor Watson. It was like a good idea. Holmes like, yeah, I had that good idea too, but it's wrong. So
And it's wrong. Yes.
yeah, all righty. Well, Sherlock Holmes's prophecy was soon fulfilled in a dramatic fashion. At 7:30 next morning, in the first glimmer of daylight, I found him standing by my bedside in his dressing gown. Tells him it's the Brook Street business. They get a letter. They have for God's sakes, come at once, PT, and they rush off to the house,
Oh,
and
yes.
Blessington has committed suicide.
Or has he?
Holmes whistled, and then he says, "Yes, he hanged himself during the night." I thought, oh my God, that's the most inappropriate whistle I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Um,
Maybe just a little. Maybe just a little.
and just funny. Like I just can picture that happening, but I don't have to picture it happening.
Because we have Jeremy Brett.
I do. I have Jeremy Brett in that episode that I'm going to share a tiny clip of. and I have to get to it. So keep talking
Yes.
about how wonderful Jeremy Brett is.
Well,
Well,
Jeremy Brett is my favorite. Jeremy Brett is my Sherlock Holmes. He is the reason why I have a tattoo. We'll
wow.
get into that another episode. Oh, look at sweaty Blessington. Wow.
Oh,
No, Jeremy Brett is the main reason why I'm a Sherlockian. You know, he's fantastic and lovely and amazing and the quintessence
here's
of,
the
yeah,
very quick scene right here. And it starts out kind of funny with this Watson's boat here with him sleeping and snoring, but this is it. It's only a minute long.
yes.
Watson,
Huh?
get dressed quickly. There's a cab waiting for us.
Why? What's the matter?
The Brook Street business.
Any fresh news? For God's sake, come at once, P. Trevelyan.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm so glad you could come.
What has happened?
Mr. Blessington has committed suicide.
Suicide?
Yes, he hanged himself during the night.
Huh. Whoops.
I could play that whistle on a loop.
I know that's an amazing whistle there. You know, I have to admit, as a mental health counselor, oh my God, I cannot have that response ever. But yeah, totally worth
When you
it.
hear about somebody's committed suicide. But it made me think, because I thought it was funny and inappropriate, and I'm like, that's a weird thing for Doyle to do. And then I thought, does Holmes whistle at other times?
Oh, good question.
I did a comprehensive search, Monica. How many times do you think Holmes whistles?
We're gonna go with maybe 6 times.
10 times. In the
10 times.
he actually
10 times.
whistles. 10 times
10 times.
he
Oh
whistles.
my Lord.
One time, it's 10 times, and then there's another time where he uses an actual whistle. He puts a whistle in his mouth and whistles. That will actually hit this.
Whoa.
But he has already whistled in Study in Scarlet. That's a weird one because it's when he's investigating the room for the first time with the murder. It says, keeping up a running fire of exclamations, groans, whistles, and little cries suggestive of encouragement and of hope. Scandal in Bohemia. When the King of Bohemia's carriage comes up out front,
Mhm.
whistled, a pair by the
Yep.
sound, said he. Does it in Twisted Lip. He does it in Blue Carbuncle when Peterson comes
Oh,
in with the,
right.
the thing. And
Yeah.
Silver Blaze, when they're out walking the
Yep.
thing, Holmes at one point he whistles, and then they say, "Oh, look, there's another track here."
Mhm.
And then this one. But then again in later stories that we won't cover in Sherlock Mondays, Dancing Men, Six Napoleons, Bruce Partington Plans, and the Three Gables, he whistles.
Wow.
In this kind of same fashion that like he's heard some information and he goes, that is not something that I ever really picture Holmes doing. I am so happy that they put it in the Granada TV series with
Oh,
Jeremy,
yes.
and he delivers it in that way. The only time we've shared a clip, and it's just him whistling because I think it's hilarious. No.
Because it's hilarious and totally inappropriate, and I love every second of it.
Trevelyan's like, he's hung himself, and Holmes goes, like, that is not what you're supposed to do. um, and
Yeah.
we have been through the whole idea too that Holmes, the reputation for Holmes, especially I think after the BBC Sherlock, is that he is kind of, like sociopathic and he doesn't kind of take other people's feelings into account, which is completely not true in all of these stories. Anytime
No.
Watson's upset by something or a client comes in and is upset, Holmes is very,
Empathetic. Yeah.
and empathetic and very conscious of how he's supposed to, help these people, how he
Hmm.
should react to things. Uh,
Hmm.
so that he would whistle in this is like,
Wow. Well, it's more, well, I mean, I can get it from a sense of gallows humor. I mean, I work with a lot of medical professionals, and medical professionals often deal with some pretty heavy duty,
Oh, yeah.
dark
Absolutely.
situations. And sometimes for coping, we have to break out the dark humor.
Oh, I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
so it's
in
like
front of Weston, not in front of Trevelyan. Like this is the moment where it wouldn't have been appropriate. So
yes, it totally isn't appropriate, but it's also a very human response.
yeah,
And that's what I'm getting at is that it actually solidifies Holmes as human, where he's breaking out kind of the dark humor.
yeah. So now again in the story, in the clip, he says he hung himself and then Holmes whistles. In the
Yes.
story, well, it's still, but it doesn't matter. It's just he's committed
He
suicide.
committed suicide.
Yeah. So he still knows what it is, right? He hanged himself
Yeah.
during. So they well, they go up to the room, and Watson has this gruesome description, right? He had tied his cord to the hook on which the heavy lamp used to hang and jumped off from the top of the very box that he showed us yesterday. Big black
Ooh,
box. Um,
big black box.
Holmes stood for a moment, and then he wants to go upstairs and look into the matter. Here's the description: a dreadful sight. I have spoken of the impression of flabbiness which this man Blessington
Mhm.
conveyed. As he dangled from the hook, it was exaggerated and intensified until he was scarce human in his appearance. The neck was drawn out like a plucked chicken's, making the rest of him seem the more obese and unnatural by the contrast.
Ooh.
Clad only in his long nightdress, and his swollen ankles and ungainly feet protruded starkly from beneath it. Very gruesome, but also a reminder that Doyle writes a lot of gothic horror stories as well. That
Mhm.
so this is not a kind of description that is unusual for him if you know his
No.
horror work. But it's gruesome for Sherlock stories, and
Yeah.
we've seen over time the Sherlock stories get more descriptive of this and have more unsettling episodes or scenes in them
Yeah.
that he didn't used to have early on. I mean, think about the earlier stories like Scandal in Bohemia and Red
Mhm.
League and some of those Case of Identity. Like, there's not even a crime, let alone a
No.
gruesome crime happening.
Exactly.
There's a smart looking police inspector taking notes. Lanner is his name.
Lanner.
Only time he's been in the canon, and I do
That's
not
what I was about to say. I believe he's the only
and
one.
he doesn't come in again. Um, so,
Yeah.
but I like this exchange from them. He says, "Mr. Holmes, I'm delighted to see you." And I said he heartily, "I'm delighted to see you." Like there doesn't seem to be the like,
The
oh,
animosity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good morning, Lanner. You won't think me an intruder, I am sure. So they seem to be okay here, and even in a little while, when Holmes then comes up with the thing, Lanner's like, "Okay, thanks." That he works well with them. So this is a
Mhm.
story where the police might not be able to figure it out, but there's no antagonism with the police force in this story.
Yeah.
Lanner thinks that, of course, he's hung himself. He was driven out of his senses. It was 5 in the morning. That's when suicides are most common. I mean, he's being like the perfect cop. Like this is what is the most likely thing. So
Exactly.
this is what happened.
Yeah.
And Holmes asked if there's anything peculiar. The screwdriver and screws, the 4 cigar ends in the fireplace.
Oh, yes. 4.
Have you got his cigar holder? Holmes asked. Oh, I've seen none. His cigar case? Yes. And I love this that Holmes um, opened it and smelled the single cigar which it contained. Let me share that picture from Paget.
Yes.
That's a good one. Here it is. Holmes smelling the cigar, figuring out what it is. And he says, and it's just a very simple picture of him just standing there in his Sherlock,
Sniffing a cigar, yeah.
sniffing the cigar with his very long fingers. Paget's really, this is one of the details Paget has on Holmes. It's long fingers, which Watson has described at some point in the stories. Um,
Yes, well, his long white nervous fingers, he adjusted the delicate needle. So like from yeah, what, Sinophore on, yeah.
yeah. So in this one, he says, "Oh, this is a Havana. And these other cigars are of the peculiar sort which are imported by the Dutch from their East Indian colonies. They're usually wrapped in
Mhm.
straw, and are thinner for their length than any other brand." So I
Yeah.
love his little details there. He doesn't only know the ash of cigars, he knows everything about cigars and tobacco.
All of the cigars and tobaccos.
Yeah. And then he reads the scene. Well, first he says these two have been smoked from a holder. These two cigars without. These are the butts that he has found that Leonard has found in the fireplace. Two have been cut by a not very sharp knife. Two have the ends bitten off by a set of excellent teeth. This is no suicide, Mr. Lanner. It is a very deeply planned and cold-blooded murder. Impossible! Cried the inspector. Great little moment of,
Yes, and
drama there. I
yes,
mean, what if you wrote now would seem totally cliche, but it works so well in this story. And
that
yet
it does.
it's not a cliche yet. So it just works so well. I really like that. And then Holmes does the whole investigating the room,
Yes.
went over the door, turning the lock, he examines it, bed, the furniture, does all this stuff. If you ever watch the Granada with Jeremy Brett. It's a great
Oh,
scene.
it's perfect.
It's a silent scene for like 3 minutes where he like goes
Yes.
around the room and he says one thing. At one point, he's like, "Watson, move to the side or something." But it's like he just silently investigates the room, and it's
Yes,
really cool.
that is cool.
The way he does it. How about the rope? Sherlock asks, and Trevelyan says it was cut from a large coil from under the bed. He was afraid of a fire, so he's always got this. Holmes says that must have saved them from trouble. And the idea,
Hmm.
you caught this, Monica, that Blessington was hung with his own
Oh,
rope. Give
oh,
someone enough rope.
and you'll hang theirself with it.
There you go. So hits his own, and he jumped off of his own black box.
Own
He didn't jump
box.
off. He was his own black box, his
But
box with his money and his own rope. That's what these guys
I
use.
mean, that's
to keep
like
it.
justice right
That's
there.
brilliant. That's
Justice.
just a little touch for this story that you don't know yet. I mean, first time reader doesn't know until you finish the end of the story. I pointed at now because these are the moments that you want to
Yeah.
realize. Watson,
Oh,
and that's it. He says, "I'll take this photograph."
oh.
I was there were three of them in it, young man, the old man, a third, I don't know who he is. First two were the other two that were been to the house. They were admitted by somebody, arrest the page. He's gone. Aha. So I'm right.
Yes,
And
not the page.
So they came in, and Holmes just has read the whole scene. He says, "I read all the footprints as we were coming in on the stairs, so that's how I knew it was three of them." And I knew three of them came in, and then the three of them left. They used the rope. It was there already. They didn't know that. That was lucky for them, but they forced the key. Can you see how the key was forced here? It was, the lock was picked.
Yeah.
And he describes the whole scene and how it must have played out. The screwdriver and screws, because they were probably going to hook up a rope, but then they realized the chandelier, so they didn't realize that. I mean, a little detail that Doyle doesn't need for the story. The story could exist with like, oh, he was hung from the hook from the chandelier. They could have known that ahead of time, but he gives us another little thing, and it's a way of, this is how Holmes figuring stuff out. Like, he's not going to be tricked by these, the screws and the screwdriver. He knows why they're there. Just another detail, another way of showing how brilliant he is to figure something.
Exactly.
But Watson then says that we could hardly follow him in his reasonings. Again, this is the Watson we have now. So they leave, and then later that day, the inspector shows up and he says, "We've got the boy." And Holmes says, "Well, I have the man." Really? He's like, "Well, at least know who they are." And it's Biddle, Hayward, and Moffat. So don't go to that law firm, but Biddle, Hayward, and Moffat.
Yep.
It is the Worthington Bank Gang, and Blessington must have been sucked. Oh, it was. They robbed the bank. They stole 7,000 pounds, but they killed the guard, and Cartwright was the other member, and he was hanged because he shot the guard, the caretaker. He shot him, and the others, three of them, one of them turned evidence. That must have been Blessington.
Oh, that was Sutton, yes, / Blessington, yes.
Yes, he's Sutton, and the other three got 15 years, but they were released, and that's when he freaked out because he saw in the papers they were released. That's when he first freaked out with Trevelyan and said, "We need to secure the house." Well, Watson's, what's the big deal here? The Lanner or whoever asks, or Trevelyan, who am I asking here? Says, well, here's Trevelyan too. Like, well, his talk about burglary was the merest blind, and why could he not tell you this? Oh, it's before that. "I think you have made it all remarkably clear," said the doctor. "No doubt the day when he was perturbed was the day when he had read of their release in the newspapers. Great. But why could he not tell you this?" Duh, because he's a bank robber. Like, why do you think that?
He's incriminating himself if he tells you anything.
I mean, it's just a reputation thing, though, right? And Holmes says this. He was trying to hide his own identity. His secret was a shameful one. And then we get the important line. You want to read that? "However, wretch as he was."
Give me one moment here. Yes. "However righteous he was."
Wretch as he was.
Wretch. Usually helps if I can find there we go. "However wretch as he was still living under the shield of British law. And I have no doubt, Inspector, that you will see that though that shield may have or may fail to guard, the sword of justice is still there to avenge."
Though the shield may fail to guard, the sword of
justice may be avenged.
Is still there to avenge. I got you clipping in and out again. Do you want to come in and out?
That doesn't help Blessington much.
I got you frozen again, Monica.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're
no,
you're glitching in and out.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go out, and then we'll talk about the end of the story.
We'll see if it reconnects.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, we're gonna go with this reconnecting here.
All righty.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. He's trying to protect his reputation. And so what Holmes is effectively saying, well, he could use the law to shield himself. He's still going to be caught by the sword of justice. So according to Holmes, this is justice that these guys came in and killed him. Is that justice? I mean, Blessington, well, I mean, I guess he kept the money, right? It's not just that he turned evidence. He kept the money and turned evidence. It does lead to the question, was he more responsible for the murder than the accomplice who was hung?
Valid criticism, but I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, that is very much a philosophical or existential question.
He's come up with these questions of justice at the end of Tales when somebody has a dark past and Holmes thinks it's okay to cover it up, especially if they've died. But this is like, but he's specifically saying it was justice that killed him, which is just another example to me of Holmes has zero concern for the law. It's always about justice.
Exactly.
Legally, he may be innocent, but according to some kind of idea of morality that Holmes has and other people may have too, it was just that he didn't get to go on and live, that his Confederates killed him.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, you know. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with this. It's also I kind of get this whole like justice thing though. You know, as a mental health counselor, it's kind of like I recognize people can change, but then again, Blessington slash
He didn't
Sutton
change. He just kept
benefit
the money.
exactly. That's what I was about to say. Is he kept the money?
Yeah.
He, you know, he wasn't repentant. He kept the money.
In other stories, that
He
was not the case.
benefited from all of this. So yeah, I can see the concept of justice here. Yes,
You're still glitching out on me.
very much so. Oh, sorry, hon. Yeah.
That's okay. We got most of what you said there. I mean, it
I don't know what the deal is.
is this idea of, you know, it does seem like justice for this story. Other stories, like I look at like Boscombe Valley, where Black Jack Ballarat did reform his life. Now, he lived high on the hog because of all the money he stole and that he murdered people with, but he did change his life. So there's kind of a little more leeway there, I think. In this case, it's like, come on, Blessington, you should just be, you know, caught by these guys. So anyway, the story ends nothing. But the three other guys, these three guys get away. For, at least for the time being, nothing has been seen of the three murderers by the police, and it is surmised at Scotland Yard that they were among the passengers of the ill-fated steamer Nora Creina, which was lost some years ago with all hands upon the Portuguese coast, some leagues to the north of Oporto. The proceedings against the page broke down for want of evidence, and the Brook Street mystery, as it was called, has never until now been fully dealt with in any public print. It is funny that in the Granada Jeremy Brett, when they play on this Brook Street mystery and Resident Patient, which is the title at the very end of that episode. But another story where they like Five Orange Pips, where criminals get away after murder and die in a shipwreck. The gang probably died, right?
Probably.
Like Five Orange Pips. They found the thing that said Lone Star, but did the crew of the Bark Lone Star all go down? We don't know.
We'll never know.
And what's interesting is there was a steamer with the name Nora Creina, which actually ran between Ireland and Liverpool at the time Doyle's writing the story. The podcast Doings of Doyle, which I loved listening to before this show this week, mentioned also that the Nora Creina is named in a Robert Louis Stevenson story, in a late story of his called The Wrecker, that Stevenson wrote with his stepson, Lloyd Osborne. So Doyle may have just read that story recently with the name Nora Creina. He's also he may know that there is a steamer actually with that name. And this is the deep cut, everybody. Nora Creina comes from a Thomas More poem from earlier in the 19th century. Thomas More was a very famous Irish poet. He was a friend of Byron. He was a favorite poet of Scott. He was one of Edgar Allan Poe's favorite poets as well. He wrote a poem called Lesbia Hath a Beaming Eye. And it's all about, and Nora Creina is named in that poem. You can read, it was in his Irish Melodies collection. You can look up Lesbia Hath a Beaming Eye and find a poem about Nora Creina. So, there you go. Deep cut for that. I tend to think, Monica, that these criminals are off somewhere living with the crew of the Bark Lone Star. So
I like it. This is good headcanon, as the kids would say. Yes. Or as I would dub it, imagination. I like your imagination here of them living with the crew of the Bark Lone Star somewhere in the abyss.
the bad guys at the end of that story survive. The bad guys at this story survive. They're all on a desert island somewhere killing each other.
It's ABC's Lost.
All righty. Well, thanks, Sherlockians. Thank you for joining us for episode 25 of Sherlock Mondays. Monica, thank you
Thank you.
for joining me for this. And you will return for our final story episode,
Yes.
The Adventure of the Empty House,
I am so excited for this.
which will be very exciting. That's the show. We'll do episode 29 will be The Adventure of the Empty House. Then we'll do a wrap-up episode for episode 30, and then we take a week off before we start The Hound of the Baskervilles. But on The Empty House, Steve Rothman, who has
Oh, I heart
edited for the BSI Press a book about the manuscript for The Empty House, which is out
Yes.
of Rosenbach. So
Yes.
that'll be a lot of fun. On our next show, everyone, episode 26, Curtis Armstrong comes back, hooray, to talk about the Greek interpreter.
Oh, this is so great.
One word, the only word I have for Greek interpreter to gear you up for it, Mycroft. That's it. I'm not going to say any more than that. Mycroft. If you haven't read it yet,
Mycroft.
you are in for a treat. Mycroft. All right.
Enjoy.
Thank you to our chat, Mrs. Hudson, Brianna, for managing the live chat. Links. Monica, thank you for Bill, your mixologist back there, your superior ginger, for
Thank you, Bill.
thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Monday. There he is. He can even get a wave. Good. Thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Mondays, Lisa Washington. We couldn't do these shows without the generous support of our patrons, including Lisa Washington. You can support the Rosenbach through donation. Your support helps us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You could also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenbach.org. Don't forget, if you're not already signed up for the Sherlock Mondays Hound of the Baskervilles, you can sign up now. Don't worry if you can't make all those episodes. We will actually be, if you are registered for that, if you can't watch it live, I will be sharing the videos with you as a recording. So if you don't register for it, you can never see it. But if you do register and you miss a night, you can watch a recording of it. So don't let that interfere you registering for the course. Again, let me remind you all to subscribe to our channel, to like these videos. And if you're listening to the podcast right now, leave us a review somewhere. I love it. Monica, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. As always, I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where the game is a book. Bye-bye, everyone.